Okay, so it's time once again for the weekend preview, looking ahead to Saturday's racing action. And it is a big Saturday of racing because it's Super Saturday, loads of competitive races across many different courses taking place. And making his weekend preview debut is Matt Gardner.
Yeah, back at Royal Ascot, wasn't it? Last
yes,
time?
Yeah. That was like an expert's view. You're into like, if that was like a one-off tournament, you're into like Premier League darts, not a regular right. Man. Yeah. I couldn't think of an analogy quick enough. So plenty to get stuck into. We'll start off with Newmarket.
Yep.
We'll jump straight into it with the Bunbury Cup, and there's an absolute abundance of runners at the moment. 92 the field with Gilgamesh, the current market leader. Yeah, absolutely.
Like you say, it's really competitive, isn't it? It's not a race that, to be honest, holds a massive amount of appeal as a betting race for me. It's the sort where I think if you are going to have a bet, I'd be looking at 2, maybe even 3, just to try and cover a few bases. I think top of the list, the two towards the top of my list anyway, would be Mukalal and Mubtasim, 6-7 to 1ish, something like that. You're not sort of putting up any trees doing that sort of thing, but I think they're both solid. I think Mubtasim, he was 3rd in the Jersey last year, improved in a listed race last time. It wasn't the best of listed races, it wasn't that competitive, but he has got form in big fields. He might want a mile now. The way he sees out his races at 7 furlongs suggests that he does want a mile. I think a strong pace over 7 furlongs with the slight uphill finish, I think will probably suit him. Obviously you've got the draw to factor in. He's coming out at 6. The couple of races today where they were sort of spread across the track, big field sprint, they finished far side, didn't they? So that could sort of play a part. But I think Mubtasim is a solid option, and Mukalal, he ran in the Hunt Cup. He was 2-3, got tired towards the finish, took its toll type thing. But I think again he's the ideal sort of horse for a big field competitive handicap. I don't think we've seen the best of him, to be honest. I think he's got some improvement. He's still got a Timeform P on. He's a horse in focus as well, actually, after the Hunt Cup. So, and dropping back a furlong from a mile back to 7 is going to be ideal for him, I think, as well. So, Gilgamesh is solid, I think, at the top of the market. You'd be looking at Maxime as well for experience in these sort of races. He more often than not runs his race. But I think for me, Mukalal and Mubtasim, they're both going to be there or thereabouts. And if you manage to nick a winner in a race like this, you've done all right.
Yeah, going to be a lovely prize, at least 6 to 1.
Yeah.
I mean, they might be bigger or anything.
So,
so we'll go from there into the Bet 365 mile. A lot less runners in this, but by no means any less competitive. At the moment, 3 joint favourites in the form of Curiosity, Ibraz, and Argentello, all about 4s 92. Yeah,
absolutely. I think this is a really good race, actually. You say, it's a much smaller field, but I think there's lots of interesting horses. I think the most interesting one is Ibraz. His form is just really strong, particularly his latest race, which was at Sandown. He beat Gossip Column, who had won the time before, and he's won twice since. The third, Kessar, came out and won. Just loads of informed horses in behind him. He's still lightly raced. He's going to go on improving. He's top on the Timeform card, and it is a strong race, but I think he just ticks all the right boxes, to be honest. A few you mentioned, First Contact, ran in the Britannia last time. He was left with loads to do. He met a bit of trouble. Didn't see the best of him by any means. I think we'll see a better First Contact here. Curiosity ran a good race in the. He was second in the Britannia. He's going to have less potential in a way. We've sort of seen he's reached that level already, whereas Ibraz, First Contact, I think, have still got a little bit better to do. Mukarab as well has the P on. He's a sectional horse as well, sectional flag for followers of the Timeform flags. This is just very different. He's won 2 minor events at Wolverhampton, so going into a deeper race, I think, for him. So, and Argentello actually is an interesting horse. He started out over 10 furlongs, and I thought he'd end up over 12, but they dropped him back, kind of against his pedigree. In Tello, they've been staying pretty well, haven't they? And the downside of his pedigree is more stamina than speed, but dropping back so miles being the making of him. So he's quite an interesting horse. But Ibraz was my sort of clear favourite in this, and I would be pretty strong on him, I think.
Okay, so the form working out well, as you say, for Ibraz, 4 to 1, and into the feature of the weekend, if we're not counting the football, the July Cup. And I've been looking at this today for the preview for Timeform.com, and I think the best place to start is with the pace here, which looks like it's going to be really frenetic.
Yeah, you pointed out earlier on, didn't you? There's sort of 7 or 8 proper pace horses in this, which does add a little bit of a dynamic to it, doesn't it? I mean, if you think back to Ascot, the Blue Point, they went like the clappers that day, didn't they? And it really suited him. I mean, he's the best horse in the race. He's got the best form. He's also got a good Ascot record. I think he's 3 from 4 there. So, there's not really a bone to pick with him, but I just don't really want to back him, to be honest. And I don't really know why, but I think I'd probably look elsewhere. It's just a case of whether he can quite repeat that away from Ascot. You wouldn't necessarily expect the July Cup to have the same setup, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that. So I can see why he is a pretty strong favourite, but I'm probably looking more at something like Eqtidar. Obviously a 3-year-old. He's still got the Timeform P on after winning the Commonwealth Cup. Even a good chunk of improvement does leave him short of the Blue Point form. But I think a really strong pace is going to bring out the absolute best in him. The slight uphill finish, I think, as well, is really going to suit him, given how strongly he saw things out at Ascot. So he does need to improve a chunk, but I would have slight doubts about Blue Point kind of absolutely peaking here. Whether if he's 3-4 pounds below his very best figure, Eqtidar improves that chunk that we expect, then all of a sudden you kind of got them levelling out. So I'd be looking at something like Eqtidar about 11-2, 6-1, something like that. I suspect he might be a bit shorter, to be honest, tomorrow, on Saturday even.
That being said, I'm just looking at the field, and how do you think it weighs up for Blue Point in particular in terms of the race he ran at Ascot? Is it as strong here? I noticed, there's no Batash, Harry Angel, and Merchant Navy's retired now to stud.
It's not, and I think that's the thing when you look when immediately in the aftermath of the King's Stand, you'd think, well, he's got an obvious chance if he goes to the July Cup, but you'd fancy 1 or 2 ahead of him. It's kind of cut up a bit, hasn't it, in terms of the real top notches? But again, I'd probably just look elsewhere, just because I do have slight doubts about him kind of absolutely repeating that. It was a very high class figure, but I'd have a slight doubt about it. So I would fancy Eqtidar. I do quite like Sands of Marley, who is going to be one of the pace horses. I think I like his attitude more than his form a little bit, if you know what I mean. He's going to be bang up there. He's definitely going to give his running. In terms of a pace scenario, it in theory should suit Limato, shouldn't it? But in theory, it suits the Limato of 2016, 2017, not the Limato that we've seen this year. He's looked a shadow of that horse in 2 starts, hasn't he? Didn't go in much zest at all in the lock-in during the Queen Anne. Obviously coming back down in trip, but it's going to need a massive turnaround from what we've seen so far. In theory, the setup would suit him, but I can't really fancy him. So Blue Point on all known form wins, but I would probably look at backing Eqtidar, I think.
Yeah, you mentioned Eqtidar as a potential improver. We've got another one that stands out like a sore thumb here in Dreamfield, who really was the best horse in the race at Ascot and was just done by a bit of a rogue.
Absolutely,
really.
Yeah. And again, it's similar in he's only a couple of pounds behind Eqtidar on the weight adjusted figures. So he did post a big effort there, and he did shape really well, didn't he? Obviously, he's the horse in focus flag as well on the back of that. So again, in a normal July Cup, would you fancy him? I don't know, but it's not really. There's a couple missing in there, like you say. On that basis, yeah, absolutely, he deserves his place in this field, and it would come as no surprise if he makes the first 3 or even wins it if Blue Point doesn't meet expectations. Yeah.
And finally, we've got to talk about Ballydoyle. They sent 5, but the one that is probably the most likely is to have a good chance is US Navy flag. Went off way too quick at Ascot, but he's dropped back in trip, and I assume one of the other 4 will help him out in terms of tactics.
I would have thought so, yeah. I mean, they probably don't need to be honest, are they? Given how it's going to tee up. But I mean, I think as they went off too hard. He's not a miler either, is he? I don't think. He's often shaped more like he's going to be a sprinter or a 7 furlong horse. Every way that you look at how it's going to be run, you'd have thought it'd suit US Navy flag. It'll actually be quite interesting to see what Ballydoyle do with the form that they've got, or 3 that they've got in that. In theory, they're more as pacemakers than anything else, given that there's another 5 or 6 pacemakers there already. So I don't know, but you can definitely see why this would suit him more than last time. Yeah.
Okay, so the vibes are that it's Eqtidar for you then.
From a betting point of view, yeah. I mean, if Blue Point wins, fair enough, take it on the chin. But yeah, it would be.
Okay, over to York now for the City Wall Stakes. Used to be at Chester, this, didn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
I think the name of the name of the race is probably a clue. Yeah.
No, actually, I don't think it. No, because we've got Walls in York.
We have. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think they do have something similarly named at Chester. So
yeah. I think they might have swapped it for him for something. They done a deal with York, so they gave him the race and got a few Saturdays off them. I might be talking total.
I'm not on the ball enough.
We're going completely off. You're going completely off the bar. Yeah. But anyway, it's going to be. Well, I'd say, how is this going to pan out? Is it going to be fast and furious, or are there a lot of hold up? I've noticed Muthmere's in here.
Yeah, I mean, 5 furlongs at York is going to be quick, isn't it? On quick ground, it's been dry as anything, hasn't it, for a few weeks now? So, I think this is just an interesting race from the way that the market's likely to pan out. You've got the 3-year-old down the bottom, Stone of Destiny, for Andrew Baldwin, who you can see why he's sort of, at the moment, obviously this might change, but he's towards the head of the betting. It was a massively improved performance in the Commonwealth Cup, and obviously being a 3-year-old, he gets plenty of weight, particularly from Muthmere. He has to carry the penalty as well. But I just think that Commonwealth Cup scenario suited him down to the ground. He's one of those horses that's a strong traveller, borderline hard puller, and I think a big field, strong pace there really suited him. 8 runners at York, they're going to go a decent gallop, but it's a different kettle of fish, isn't it? So I think he does have a little bit to prove in my mind in terms of how this race sets up compared to Ascot. I think Muthmere, on all known form, just wins this race for me. You take cover, and in theory has the best form or the best chance at the weights, given that he's getting weight from Muthmere, but he's 11. He's been some way below his best both starts this year. He looks like he's retaining plenty of ability, but whether he's kind of up to run into the sort of figure he was capable of last year, I don't know. Whereas Muthmere, we know, he's 8 now, he's getting on as well, but we know that he still retains plenty of ability. Second at Sandown last weekend, was it? Probably should have won. Well, in fact, he almost certainly should have won. Checked for a run just as Judicial even made his move, and we know at Sandown that it's very difficult to make up ground, particularly on the outside. So I think if you get anything near the 7-2, which he is now for Muthmere, I think that's a really good bet, to be honest.
Yeah, he does look a bit of a sneak to me. Surely he's a bit of a higher class of animal, masquerading.
That's the point. It's a heck of a lot easier than the races he normally runs. And you think the Temple and races that the company he was keeping last year. This is far easier. You got like some Mr. Lupton in here, who is probably better in those top end handicaps than he is listed races. Bigger field, better pace. El Astronaut, Moment of Madness, their horses coming out of handicaps. You'd be disappointed, I think, if Muthmere gets beat at the very least.
Okay. Wow. The small matter of the John Smith Cup up next. Plenty of runners in here. 2 pages, in fact. 4-1 the field at the moment. It's Dash of Spice leading the market.
Yep, and I think he just about ticks every box going for me. Dash of Spice. I mean, there's absolutely no way of knocking him, I don't think. He's very, very progressive. Second on his first 2 starts this year. The second time up against that Ajman King at Epsom, who again is another progressive horse. He won at Epsom the time after very easily by Golden Wolf, who's come out and run well 2-3 times since. Obviously won the Duke of Edinburgh at Royal Ascot as well. Again, got to the front very easily, settled the race, and then was closed up on late, but he was in no trouble whatsoever. He ran to a really big figure on our card for a handicap winner, to be honest, as well, when you factor in the value extra that he was as well. So got the £5 penalty for that. Comes here, dropping back 2 furlongs to a mile and a quarter on a galloping track like York is going to be no problem whatsoever to him. And I think he just is the most progressive horse that brings the best form to the race. And he's shortish price, relatively 4-1 favourite, but I can't find any way of knocking him.
Would you be put off if he went any shorter than 4-1?
I'd probably back him down to 3-1, 7-2.
Okay.
After that, I'd probably be looking more for an each way bet, to be honest.
If I had to press you for one, is there any that are standing out at the moment? I know it's early in terms of the prices.
Yeah, I think there's a couple. Barocco, you can definitely see running a big race. Again, big field, decent gallop's going to suit him. The main one would be Across Dubai, who is a bit of a tricky horse. He's a strong traveller that probably doesn't find quite as much as he looks like he's going to, but he's got cheap pieces on for the first time. And I think he's the sort that is going to pop up in one of these big field handicaps at some point. And I think he's the sort of horse that when he does pop up, he's going to look very, very well handicapped, just given the sort of style. Like, he ran in a group race at Goodwood last year and he didn't look out of place by any means. He's also the sort of horse that's going to travel, go short in running and finish 8th or something like that. But in terms of an each way bet, I'd look at him first. But like I say, anything down to 3 to 172, I'd be a Dash of Spice man all the way.
Okay, so 4 to 1 at the moment, Dash of Spice, but if you want something a bit bigger, Barocco and Acrosti by both about 16 to 1 at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. I think they've both got good each way chances.
Okay, we're going to switch off ITV now and switch on to Ascot for the 305. Now, I must admit I haven't had a look at this race, but there's 2 in here that you really like the look of. Yeah,
it's just a very brief touch on a race that I think it's going to pay to follow. Extra Elusive, El Wazir are the 2, and Baritone really to an extent. There's probably 3 in here actually. Extra Elusive is 2 from 2. He won at Newbury last year. He beat First 11, who's rated about 110, something like that with us now. He was disappointed earlier on today, but actually he ran a really good race at Royal Ascot. He came back from 8 months off, won at Nottingham. He did really well to win. He was still green. He was caught a long way back in a steadily run race. Tanked through it, got to the front, went about 4 lengths clear, and then they eased him down. He was really impressive that day. He's still got the large P on. I think he's going to still improve a chunk. He might even end up being a pattern horse, to be honest. He's kind of going that way. I think the same could be said for El Wazir, a horse that all of his form has worked out well. He was made the frame twice last year, won at Sandown, and I think he's by Frankel, but the downside of his pedigree is all stamina. So he's showing really good speed for a horse that's bred the way that he is, which is encouraging for now and for when he goes up to 1.5 miles, sort of towards the end of this year, maybe even as a 4-year-old. And then Baritone, again, you look at his pedigree, he's from the Stravagante Stargazer family that Sir Michael Stout's done well with in the past. I think he's probably a horse more for 1.5 miles. I'd be a bit sweeter on him if it was 12 furlongs rather than 10 on Saturday, but I think this is just one of those races where bang him any Timeform trackers and keep an eye on them, because I think they're all really progressive, very interesting horses. Of the 3, Extra Elusive would be the one for me this weekend, but all 3 I think are well worth following this year.
Yeah, no price at the moment, but Extra Elusive, the one you think that could be a pattern horse in time.
I think he's going that way, yeah, definitely. I mean, he's a half brother to Ajaya, who was a pattern sprinter. Obviously, he's a bit more stoutly bred than that one being by a master craftsman, but I think he's definitely heading that way. Another couple of steps to get there, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up there before the year was out.
Okay, I've just scrambled the paper together. It's a bit of a shambles in front of me, but is there any, if I had to pick you for a standout bet on Saturday, that you would side towards?
It'd be Dash of Spice. It's a really competitive race. It's arguably one of my favourite races of the year, to be honest. I think this looks a decent renewal, but I think Dash of Spice is just one of those horses that stands out in a competitive race. And if, like I say, if you're getting anywhere 3 to 1 upwards, if you can get any of the 4 to 1 that is about at the moment, I think that's well worth taking.
Always a man who goes with a brave nap.
Yeah.
Cheers, Matt.
Cheers.